Hello everybody and welcome to Webcam Wildlife, and thank you all so much for signing up and tuning in. I'm Hannah Stitfall and it is a total privilege to be here for this hour-long special event as part of 30 Days Wild with the Wildlife Trust, which I do hope you're all taking part in. Really exciting stuff. And if you enjoyed that wildlife clip we just showed, remember you can watch the Wildlife Trust webcams over on their website at www.wildlifetrust.org/webcams. So, should we get into it? We have quite the jam-packed hour for you all, where we're going to be talking to some of the most innovative and inspiring experts at wildlife cameras that we really have here in the UK. They're really bringing us closer to the natural world, and let's face it, there's never been a more important time. And if you have sent any questions in previously, we're going to try and answer some of those at the end, but if you have any throughout, then just drop them in the comments below and we'll try and answer as many as we possibly can at the end. So without further ado, let's meet our amazing panel. First up, we have Kate Macrae, also known as Wildlife Kate. There she is, you can see her there. Now, I'm sure many of you watching, you're aware of Wildlife Kate and her magic garden. That, I mean, I don't know how many cameras you've got in there, but we can answer that. It's rigged to the brim, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah. There's cameras all over the place. You can't creep up my garden without being seen, certainly.
Thanks ever so much. We'll talk to you in a minute. Then next up, we have Robert Phillips. I forgot your name there, Rob, and I've met you before. Now, Rob heads up the My NatureWatch DIY camera project, which is truly amazing. It's with the Royal College of Art and Goldsmith University. And he's enabled us, well, we can all make a really good wildlife camera now in our garden for £35, which is a steal in itself. But at the end, we will be announcing 5 winners of the competition, which we'll be announcing, won't we, Rob?
Absolutely. And they'll be sent out immediately so that you can get involved, and hopefully they should arrive in the next few days so you can really participate from your gardens.
So stick around for the end for that. And then we've got Kalyani Lodhia, who is a wildlife documentary researcher and also a biologist. And she made a wildlife camera trap out of a bucket this year. Is that right?
It is right, yeah. It was a bucket that had paneer in it previously, so yeah.
I can't wait to hear all about this. It's brilliant. And then lastly, we've got Stuart Edmunds. Now, he is Shropshire Wildlife Trust webcam wildlife expert, and you may know Stuart's work with pine martens, one of the most elusive species. So we'll chat to you at the end, Stuart. Say hello quickly.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me along today. And I'm probably responsible for making sure that nobody's safe to walk through the woods in Shropshire without being spotted by a camera, I'm afraid to say.
Excellent work, Stuart. So without further ado, let's get into it and let's have a chat with Kate. Hello, Kate. How are you in your gorgeous garden?
I'm very well, thank you. Yes, I thought I'd give the number and come out here.
So for those of us people that might not be aware of your work and who you are, give us a brief introduction and what it was that first inspired you to get into wildlife webcams.
Love wildlife has stemmed from a child. I always want to be able to see maybe more than I can when I'm actually sitting here in the garden. And being a teacher as well, it's another great way of showing children exactly what's in their area, whether it be in the garden or in the school grounds. So these cameras are just working 24/7. And I'm a bit of a whirlwind, as in I've always got lots of things on the go. So the more cameras I have going, they just tick along doing their own thing. So I can have lots and lots of things happening, but be centrally based and still access all of that footage. And it's just become a complete addiction.
And I mean, you really do. You've captured some amazing behaviour over the years, haven't you?
Yeah, obviously, the more cameras you get out, and particularly if those cameras are recording 24/7, at some point you are bound to catch something pretty amazing. And I've been doing this for certainly with wired cameras for probably about the last 8 years. And some of those cameras are just on all the time. So I just regularly check through the footage, and you quite literally never know what you're going to get. And yeah, I've had some pretty spectacular stuff.
How many cameras have you got at the moment, did you say?
At home, at the moment I've only got about 10 going. It depends on the time of the year and what nesting. And then the site UView that I manage in Worcestershire, we've got about 30 cameras there. And then I've set them up all over the country, both wired cameras, and I've always got numerous trail cameras here, there and everywhere, depending on the time of the year and what's happening.
Now, of course, you know, this last year it's been incredibly challenging for everybody, but you didn't let this get you down, did you? You started your lockdown garden bird challenge. Tell us a bit about this, Kate.
Well, I can't believe it was a year ago now, but obviously I had more time than ever to spend in my garden, which actually was a real privilege, because usually I'm here, there and everywhere. And especially linked in with the work I do at school, I was amazed at how little people, children and adults, could recognise or really knew about their own spaces. And I think that was the wonderful thing about lockdown. They say every cloud has a silver lining. It meant that people came to appreciate their own space that much more, and they became ultra interested suddenly, because they were actually seeing things that have always been there that maybe they'd never noticed before. And birds are just such a good way in. So it's so easy to get a bird feeder up. It's so easy wherever you are to attract some kind of birds. Obviously, I'm lucky. I live in a semi-rural location and I get lots of birds, but everybody can do a little something. So I did a big challenge. I did a lot of things on my website, quizzes for people to help them learn how to ID birds, information about food and different feeders and all things like that, really to help people, particularly if they were working with their kids at home, self-educating, that you could actually start to get your kids and you interested in the birds in your garden.
That's it as well. And we always say kids, but you know, I think over this last year, especially with resources like yours, and like there's so many, nature for everybody, isn't it? It's just bringing it to them, and that's the beauty of wildlife webcams, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, most of the stuff I do is here in my garden. You know, I'm self-taught. I started small with just one nest box camera. So I hope that people look at what I do and think, actually, I'd really like to have a go, you know, and we all got to start somewhere. I love tech, and the technology is becoming so advanced now. You can literally, you know, buy stuff off the shelf now that will do. And kind of see today, there is a lot of very, very accessible and affordable kit that can help you and your family really get up and close with what's right on your doorstep. And I think that's so important.
So we've got your favourite wildlife camera clip to play in now. Tell us a little bit about that quickly.
Right, you asked me to find my favourite trail cam clip. Oh my God, I've got hundreds of thousands of trail cam clips, and to pick one was really, really, really difficult. But yeah, I've chosen one from Shetland. Now, I go up to Shetland once a year and I guide for Shetland Wildlife. So I guide alongside Hugh Harrop, who runs that company. And as part of my week guiding, I take a load of trail cams so that we can spread them out as we take the guests round, and it enables us to almost have eyes on parts of the island that we can't normally see. So the clip you're going to see is one of the iconic mammals from Shetland. It's an otter, and it is such a special clip because, well, you'll see the light, the backdrop and the behaviour all came together in one.
Well, I tell you what, thanks ever so much, Caitlin. Let's have a look at that clip now. I mean, that is a pretty massive otter, isn't it?
I know, and it's just one of those wonderful. The thing is, you use your fieldcraft. I could see that area of grass was being used to roll. I mean, there were lots of sprinters around, and often when they come out of the sea, they'll come out and they'll dry themselves almost like on the grass, like a towel. So they'll roll around. So you can look out for these spots on the grass where you can see they regularly come out and dry. And I put the trail cam, and that was, I probably got about 20 really amazing clips there. And then they come out in the day. So, and obviously going to Shetland in June, it's light nearly all the time. The sun hardly goes down. So it gives you an opportunity to literally have a mega amount of wonderful light for your trail cameras. And that one all came together.
Well, I really enjoyed that, Kate. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I've never seen that one before of yours, surprisingly. It's lovely, though. Thank you. We'll speak again at the end for the Q&A.
Okay.
So now let's talk to Rob Phillips all about these DIY cameras that he's got. Let's get him on. Hello, Rob. How are you?
Oh, great, thank you. Great, thank you very much. And thank you for welcoming me on board this panel.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I mean, you know, My NatureWatch it's been a huge success, hasn't it? But before we get into that, what made you get into wanting to stick cameras up in the garden?
Sure. So I'm a product designer. So we do all sorts of things, work in all sorts of different spaces, making things. Many years ago, I was trained as a blacksmith, shoeing horses, and worked on a whole different sort of range of how we use materials. And I think people often, there's a connection between the natural world, the things we create, the things we make, and kind of how we explore spaces. And I think the biggest skills that we can ever teach others is how to look. Technology isn't a silver bullet. It's not going to solve the problems that we have. And we didn't do this project to kind of catalyze that. We started to actually go, how can we change people's behaviors, people's opinions, people's minds? And that's just by making people look more closely at what's around them. I mean, when we were first starting to deploy camera kits, it was quite strange because a number of people would place them in their gardens. We'd talk to them later on, and there would be kids, teenagers going, oh man, we didn't get a snow leopard. And we're like, well, I've got to be honest, you don't really get many snow leopards in East Croydon. However, I think that doesn't matter. The fact that they started to then think about their architecture, pond life, wildlife, what was happening, how they were positioning things, making a hedgehog highway, all these, it's an amazing catalyst for kind of changing people's perception. So it was amazing to be part of the team in collaboration with the Interaction Research Studio at Goldsmiths. And you know, the project started about 2.5-3 years ago with a colleague called Bill Gaver, and we sort of went, oh right, how could we actually get people to make their own tools to explore the natural world? What would that be like? How would that work? And as we were working through proposals, their team came up with the suggestion, why don't we start to make camera traps? And so we were like, okay. And it was amazing how since then we've worked with everything from cinemas, creating local trailers, through to pubs, through to small clubs, football clubs, and people have just gone, oh, what's happening outside of our back door? One of the best groups that a colleague of mine, Amina, ran at the Design Museum in London, was working with an over 60s tech group, and it was fantastic because they were teaching their grandchildren how to make these kits, and they were starting to feel reskilled, which was pretty empowering, pretty amazing. So I think people always thought of this project or kind of looking at the natural world for children. I think it's for absolutely everyone, and I think it's been quite emotional. Some of the anecdotes that we've had back, where people have really sort of gone, I've seen this with my grandson or with my friend, and I've started to connect with the neighbour next to me because they've bought bird food because I couldn't get out because I was shielding or whatever. And it's been really amazing at how those communities have been brought together through nature. And I think people often think the natural world is, you know, in the countryside. No, it is everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Go and lift a stone in your garden. Go and, you know, look at a long piece of grass by a verge, and you'll see things of different size and different scale. Unfortunately, it won't always be a snow leopard. I'm sorry, but it's usually pretty insightful and pretty interesting. So yeah.
Rob, I want you to bring snow leopards on tap now to right? I'm expecting it. But no, you're so right. And it's about accessibility, isn't it? And the beauty of the project that you've been running, it's really, really accessible to anybody. And that's what it's all about. I mean, what have some of your highlights been over the course of the project?
Yeah, that's a huge question. So I mean, we've had some pieces of equipment, people have taken them on holiday with them, and we've gone, right, okay. And then some people have sent us emails going, yeah, we got stopped at the airport with these wires and kits and things, and we had to, and you're like, right, okay, was it good? It was like, yeah, the security guards asked us, what is this thing? What are you doing? And they were really involved in it. So we're like, that's good. I think there's been so much activity. It's like the best way to check out most of it is to have a look at the social media platform that's been running for about 2 years, with just the hashtag My NatureWatch, because I don't really want to leave any individuals out of this, but there have been so many groups that have been empowered, ecology groups, teachers also, that are really starting to go, right, we can now afford to deploy these things, and if they get broken, that's okay, because they're cheap, and I think that's really good. It's the same way that children put on play clothes. Why? Because then you can get mucky, and then you can get messy, and you can get active, and that's really important, because otherwise we have quite a tentative approach, because, you know, all sorts of research projects see these as far too expensive.
So Rob, I mean, we've got a couple of images, I think. Did you take these yourself? Tell us about these. And this was taken with one of your cameras, yeah?
Yeah, so we've been working with a number of initiatives. Naturally, we are taxpayer funded. We're not for profit, so we're an academically funded project, and we it's mainly, to be honest, been sort of like part of a passion of going, who do I want to talk to? Also, who can we catalyse? And one group was the Nep Estate. If you haven't, if you're quite new to rewilding or processing, and you know, you should just go and have a visit. It truly is a slice of heaven. And we got a kind opportunity where Lucy Groves, one of the wildlife officers leading up the White Stork project, went, hey Rob, do you want to come? And literally, as I was hanging up the phone, I was in the car, like, yes. And it was amazing. We got to work with her volunteers, and that gave so many new insights to how their storks were behaving, but they were captured by those volunteers. So these were people that have never previously deployed wildlife cameras, and they kind of just got on with it, and they didn't feel intimidated by it, which was pretty amazing. So all the pictures shown are taken by Lucy and her volunteers, and they're amazing. They're absolutely, wow. Yeah, they're amazing. Oh. I think the thing that we forget is that, I mean, look at that. The cinematography in it is fantastic, and this is just taken on one of these. Sorry, there it is. Tiny little boxes with a bit of tech in some food packaging. The Goldsmiths team designed, and then the RCA team helped to do the engagement side of it. So yeah, it was it's pretty rewarding stuff.
It really is, and when you look at the quality of those photographs, and then you think, oh, it came out of that little box. you know, and it is about making everything accessible to people, especially with the natural world. I think it's brilliant, Rob. I really, really do. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome.
We'll have some questions for you at the end as well.
Brilliant.
So let's talk to Kalyani. Now, Kalyani, where are you? You're here somewhere. First of all, where are you? You said you've just moved house, yeah?
Yeah, in London.
But what made you get into wildlife cameras and out wildlife in your garden?
Well, it's a weird one because I never grew up around wildlife. I never grew up around nature. My parents aren't interested in it. My family cross the road when they see a cat because they get scared. So, you know, I never had a garden with anything in it growing up. But for some weird reason, I was always interested in wildlife. And then this year, because obviously we're stuck in lockdown, etc., I moved back to my parents' house in Leicester for a while. And it was just an opportunity for me to get to know wildlife in Leicestershire. In Leicester, I had finally access to a car, access to the outdoors, access to nature, because, you know, I've always lived in cities and stuff. So yeah, so I just decided I'm gonna head out, see what's there.
Now, we'll get on to your wildlife clips in a minute. This camera trap in a bucket.
Yeah.
Talk us through it. What?
So I first started off with some trail cams that I just got just to dot around as sort of like a recce, see what's around, see what's out there in local woods, local patches. And then I thought, because I'm a wildlife photographer as well, I thought I wanted to take my photography outside and kind of extend the camera trapping to slightly more better quality cameras. But they're obviously very expensive. You don't want to leave a camera outside. So I bought like a £200 camera off Gumtree, and I needed to shelter it with something. So I was like, there's a bucket in the garage that we used for paneer for a dinner party once at my parents' house. Because, you know, Asian people, we love to feed a lot of people. We love to feed them a lot of food. So we have our food by the bucket. So there's a spare bucket lying around, made a little hole in it, shoved the camera in, made more holes for the wires, etc., and sent it outside. So that's the story of the bucket. I've had a lot of technical difficulties with it, but not because of the bucket, because of other things. So I haven't got anything good from that just yet.
Tell you what, Kalyani, I need to come to your house. Sounds wonderful.
You do. We are feeders. You're more than welcome anytime.
Now, we've got some of your clips to play in. Tell us a bit about these and why they're your favourite.
So I don't know which ones to do. I think one of them is my badger. So I've always wanted to see a badger. I've never seen one that isn't roadkill before. And I found a badger set, and I set up my little trail cam. Went to check it a couple of days later, and I called him Biju, which means badger in Hindi. And here he is. He's got 3 legs.
Oh goodness!
Yeah,
I haven't seen this yet either. So I didn't realise he had 3 legs.
Yeah, so he's just hopping along, having a good time. But the thing is, he looks happy, healthy, nice and chubby. And this is also a weasel that I saw in the same spot, like something that I never ever expected to see near my house. Just like a little, you can see it's really little. See it moving through the tree up there. It's one of those things, you set the camera up in one place. I've got some badgers, got weasel, muntjac, so many birds, foxes, all walking through the same area. And for me, that was like, I didn't know that was all there. That was amazing.
It really is. It's a door into the natural world that you. I mean, it could be going on right behind you, and if you've got a camera there, you will never know. So, what would your top tips be for people that want to start getting into wildlife cameras?
Into wildlife camera traps, I would say definitely do your research on firstly maybe what you're looking for. Look for signs for that animal, and I think for me, I really enjoy that because it's like a little detective mission where you're looking for, you know, badger sets, you're looking for the holes, you're looking for the hairs, you're looking for all of these little clues that they're around, and then set them up and just keep going, keep trying. Because, you know, I set up my camera trap for the badgers, and you need to kind of see them go past, but that's not quite the right angle, so you'd change it a little bit. So it's all about just keep doing it and keep changing the angles, keep changing your positions, and then eventually I think you'll find something that's really cool.
You certainly will. Thank you so much. We'll have some questions for you at the end. I didn't know that badger had 3 legs. That shocked me. Thank you. Now let's get on Stuart. Now you may know Stuart Edmunds from social media. He's a bit of a pine marten connoisseur, should we say? So let's have a chat with him about how he's using wildlife cameras to really get an insight into their world. So hello, Stuart.
Hi, Hannah. How are you?
I'm very well, my love. How are you?
Good. Very well, thank you.
So what got you into wildlife cameras and camera traps at the beginning?
Well, I've kind of from a slightly different angle from Kalyani was saying that she wasn't really into it originally, but she's got into it over the years. But I was just totally obsessed with wildlife from the time that I was let off the leash and let outside to play in the garden, really. And I never really appreciated what we'd got in Shropshire. I've lived in Shropshire for most of my life, and I used to go off all over the place. Instead, there's nothing to see in Shropshire, so I'd go up to Scotland, into the wilds of Wales to see things. And it's only really through my introduction to camera traps back in was probably about 2008 or so. I saw a great documentary all about tigers, Land of the Lost Tiger, and how these camera traps were being used to suddenly find animals that were presumed extinct. And I thought I'd love to be able to do that. And it'd be great if we had something like that in Shropshire. And it was only really then through my involvement with the mammal group that I actually started to see that there was potentially people seeing things like pine martens in Shropshire, but they were never able to verify them because pine martens are pretty elusive. They're dashed past. People see them for a few seconds unless you're lucky enough to get them to come into a feeder, as a few friends of mine do up in Scotland. It kind of opened my eyes to the fact that we may have things here, but we'd need to utilise the technology that I'd seen on BBC documentaries to try and actually find it. And of course, after a few years of failed attempts, finding all kinds of other wildlife, very interesting wildlife, but not quite our target species, where we discovered pine martens in the county in 2015. So 6 years now. And the great thing about the camera traps is they're monitoring and picking up pine martens that aren't showing any kind of physical evidence. We're not seeing field signs of these animals. They're pretty much like spirits of the woodland. We don't see the trails. It's the others have been talking about using field crafts, and you can use field crafts as we have for badgers, deer, and things that leave really obvious trails. That we're not finding any field signs, so I must admit it's been a little bit of flukery when it comes to detecting some of these pine martens, because they're covering such huge areas and not hanging around for too long. So it's just having those cameras in the right place at the right time.
So how exactly are you using them to monitor them? I mean, do you know all of these individual pine martens, or as you just said, they're ghosts of the forest? Do you know how many you've got? I mean, how are you using the wildlife camera traps to help?
So the big thing really was we were trying to find out that, first of all, that if we ever lost pine martens in the county, they were presumed extinct, and just to start using the cameras to find out where they were. We could identify where there were pine martens around, and then we could ask locals if they'd seen pine martens previously. And I'd often just test people by showing people photos of black cats, polecats, and other things, and pine martens. And they'd often point to the pine martens and say, "Oh, yeah, we saw these going back 20 years." But we never really thought there was anybody interested in it. And it was that really made me start to think, well, if I can show these people camera trap footage of things like pine martens that nobody knew were even in existence in the county, it really kind of sparked their interest in wildlife. So again, it's reiterating that point. If you get people seeing exactly what they've got living on their doorstep or in their local woods, they're suddenly actually quite interested in the wildlife. And of course, if they're interested, they'll work a bit harder to protect it.
Very, very true. And what would your top tips be for somebody, wanting to start getting into camera trapping species? I mean, you'll say, you can't find field signs. What would you say? Just put them up anywhere?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's different levels. So a good starting point is always to test your cameras out in your local patches. So if you've got a little bit of garden space, lawn, it's good just to experiment with the camera trap, see if you've got hedgehogs venturing in. So what I tend to do is set camera traps up quite low when I'm trying to record things like hedgehogs in the garden, but also just to make sure that I've got the angles right, that I can then transfer those I suppose learnings in camera traps to the woodland, and try then to use those techniques to get things like pine marten chest bibs that we can use to identify the individuals. And I'd encourage people to really just experiment with looking for those field signs, so that there's nothing more satisfying than they're going out looking for a trail and thinking that looks like there's something being interesting along this trail. You put a camera trap out and you get like some of the wonderful badger footage and things that Kalyani's picked up, and things like otters that Kate's picked up in Shetland. I think those kind of like that combination of technology and fieldcraft is incredibly satisfying.
No, it really, really is. And so I think we've got a clip to play in. Again, I haven't seen this. Now, this is your favourite clip. Now, why is this your favourite clip?
Well, what you say, it's not necessarily the most entertaining clip, but what we have got is a clip that has a story behind it, and that this is why it's so special to me. And of course, it's my beloved pine marten. So it's one of my favourite mammals, and I'd always want to try and record pine martens up nice and close, just to, because they've got some incredible features like the retractable claws that you very rarely see if you see them dashing past, or if you're lucky enough to see them regularly, and just to be able to do that work. There was quite a few weeks of work to actually attract the martens in the first place, and then to get them safely eating in front of the camera trap and feeling safe that they're not going to be disturbed was pretty satisfying. So I think that's one of my kind of next steps with camera trapping, is trying to get things as close, up close and personal as possible.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with us, and we'll have some questions for you at the end. Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, I think it's time for our competition result winners, which is very exciting. Let's get Rob back on. Now, this is 5 people that are going to be winning 5 of My NatureWatch cameras. So, Rob, hello.
Hello, welcome. So, yes, a running order. I think these have been put down by our 30 Days Wild team. So they're in no particular order. But our first competition winner is Mark Seabrook. So I believe, Mark, camera and a kit is on its way to you. Second is Nicola Entwistle. I hope that I've pronounced that right. I apologise if I haven't. Third is Ashley Greening. Fourth is Kathy Campbell. And I wasn't involved in any selection. It was totally randomly put together. But Robert Herring is the fifth winner that we have today. So thank you very much for all participating. And can I just ask that you please tweet any results and images that you capture. If you've got any issues, then let us know. We're just mynaturewatch.net. Thank you, Hannah.
And a huge congratulations to all of those winners. Now, that's nearly all we've got time for, but we're going to open up the panel now to some of your questions, and I can see some in front of me right now. So thank you ever so much for sending them in to us. So let's have a look. So this is for Peter. Now, this is going to be an open panel, so feel free to chip in whenever you like. So, what is the best way to monitor future activity in a nest box I'm planning to put up without disturbing the residents? Oh, Kate, you're... Let's go for Kate, because I could see her start talking, but she was on mute. So, Kate, what do you reckon to that?
Well, there's plenty of kits available now. for nest boxes, and I do a lot of that. A lot of my work goes on in the autumn and winter, so I'm setting these boxes up. That's the secret, is to get your boxes set up when it's not breeding season. Don't leave it to the last minute and then see them go in and think, oh, I need to get a camera in there. That isn't the time to do it. Recommend setting it up now, you know, once the breeding season's over. The best kits, you can buy plenty online, really good quality kits from companies like Handycam, Garden Nature are ones I use, where you buy the complete stuff. That's how I started, with a nest box and the camera and all the cabling you need. Just plug it in and you're off. There's ones now from those that will work on an app, so you can access it on your app. And that's how I started. And then as you get really hooked, you can start taking it a bit further, and I now custom build most of my boxes because I want a specific camera and specific lighting. So it's like the slippery slope, I'll warn you. Once you get one, you'll get hooked.
Oh, there you go, Peter. Right, so this next question, oh, this is a good one. Who am I going to ask this then? This is from Melissa. Are the cameras better off fully camouflaged? Stuart.
Right, this is something that I've experimented with a bit, and I've noticed it again, looking at what other people are doing on social media, is that people are experimenting with kind of like camo tape, and if you really want to get creative, you can go around collecting foraging bits of woodland moss and all sorts, and covering the cameras. Now that doesn't necessarily help make the animals feel more comfortable. They tend to not really react, from my experience, to the cameras themselves. But I think if you're putting camera traps out somewhere on public land, there's a good chance of people coming across them. There's probably a little less chance that they're going to notice the camera traps if they're well camouflaged. But the camera traps are designed to be as unobtrusive as possible. So generally, there's no need, unless you really want to make sure that your camera trap's not spotted by any members of the public that may well, there's dodgy people out there. You never know if your camera trap's going to get stolen. So that's one of the big worries of camera trapping.
It's not the badgers, it's the people. Right, okay. So next we've got, this is coming from Brian. How easy is it to film night wildlife, and do you need more than one camera? Kalyani, go on then.
Well, a lot of the camera traps that you can buy ready do film night footage as well, so it's black and white. So I think it's pretty easy. You don't need more than one camera, but I always like to have one. I think it's the same thing as Kate. Once you get started, you're kind of like, oh, maybe if I put another one here, then I can get a different angle. Or maybe if I put another one in another woods, then I can get other animals. So it's just a slippery slope. But I started with one. That badger with 3 legs was just from the same camera that I left in the same place for a few days. So I don't think you need more than one, but you might want more than one.
Start off with just one, see how it go. Then if you have a million badgers and dancing pine martens, then maybe invest in a few more. But if not, just stick with one to start with, okay? Now, this is coming from Samantha. Oh, very, very good. Oh, depends. I'm not going to answer it. I'll ask it. What height is best for hanging a wildlife camera in a tree? Go on then, Rob.
That's a massive question. As in, like, how long's a piece of string? I think the thing is, it depends. It really does depend what you're looking for. I think the thing is, most people set up their camera traps forgetting about, obviously, where sunlight is coming through and how that is interfering. So obviously that's bleaching out a lot of the pictures. Ideally, you kind of want things, I think, and I would suggest maybe at human head height, directing down. I'd probably say about 30 to 45 degree angle. Why? Because it's easier to fit. If you're putting it at the top of a 20-foot tree and you fall out, it might hurt. I think you need to be a bit aware, obviously, if you're working in a public highway as well, how you're positioning those things. So yeah, I think it also depends on what you're capturing as well. And I think the bigger issue is also, should you use bait or not with camera traps, and how does that work, and which feeds into whole different ecologies, and that's something, unfortunately, I don't think I'm qualified enough to answer, but that is a challenge. How and what impacts do we have on those environments? And so that's why it's quite a complex issue. I think it's not just about plugging and play, if that makes sense.
I think as well, it's a huge question to ask, isn't it? But going back to your field signs, if you've got an active badger set there, set it up, get down on your hands and knees, sort of get at eye level how tall you think the badger's going to be, and then you will get great shots. But just if it's a tricky one, that one. Right, listen, Kate, this is definitely one for you. It's a long one. I have a wildlife camera that we set up at night to watch visiting hedgehogs, but it goes off all the time, and I have lots of footage captured with nothing on it. Would love to know how to better set it up. I mean, we've all been there. Let's be honest, Kate, haven't we?
Well, we have, and people sometimes say to me, how come you get such good footage? And I say, because I don't show you the tens of thousands of clips that aren't so good. Yeah, it's a real skill, as with anything else. Setting trail cams is a real skill, and it entirely depends on your kit as well. Some trail cams are really hypersensitive to additional movement, so maybe something simple as a grass or a branch. But what you've also got to remember is sometimes your trail cam will trigger when the wildlife is around underneath it. So it's triggering correctly because it's detected something's there, because it's picking up the ambient IR. So that's a change in body temp, change in ambient temperature. So it's picking up that something's there, but it's not actually in the field of view of your trail camera. So you have to bear in mind so many things. The most important thing, like you said, to me, is getting eye level with your subject. So if you know what you're trying to get it as low as you can, so it's right level with them. Check the surrounding area. If there's branches sticking up, or little bits of leaves and things like that, try and either choose another area, or if it's in your own garden, I do a little bit of gardening with the secateurs, clip out a few extra bits. And again, fieldcraft. So if you can see they tend to always come through a certain hole, then think about how you could set your trail cam to pick that up, and don't set it, if you can see the trail going like this, don't set your trail cam up at 90 degrees to it. Set it up facing it, so the trail cam triggers as soon as maybe the hedgehog comes through your little hedgehog highway, and it will film it all the way, rather than like that, because otherwise sometimes by the time it triggers, your wildlife's gone past. But it's trial and error, and the great thing about this kind of kit is don't give up. If you're getting things that aren't working, try a different position, think about the height, think about how close it is to your subject. It's very much experimentation, and gradually you'll get better and better, and it'll become more intuitive.
And like you said, you don't put up the 10,000 blurry clips of leaves and twigs.
I don't have that many awful ones, obviously, but yeah, you can download a card sometimes, and you've got, I've just got collected some in now, and there's 400 clips, and maybe you lift 2 or 3 that you think, oh yeah, I like those. But then you look at that and you think, right, how can I go back now and reset my camera and get something better? And it's like taking a photo. You're looking at the background, you're looking at the light, you're looking at the position, and that's what then makes a really good trail cam footage, because effectively you're filmmaking.
Yeah, totally. It's learning a craft, isn't it?
Yeah,
so keep it up. Keep it up.
Absolutely.
Even if you have got thousands of shots with leaves and twigs, persevere. Right, so our next question is from Debbie, and is video or still shot better for capturing an image? Kalyani.
Well, for the trail cams, I like to keep them on video, because it kind of shows you the surrounding behavior. It shows you more than just a still, and it also means that the camera doesn't have to reload itself, so the sensors don't have to kind of switch back on. So what I find with stills is that the animal will come along, like Kate said, and it will trigger the camera to go off, but then by the time it's gone off, the animals moved or gone somewhere else. So with a video, I find it a lot better. I can take stills from it if I want to, but sometimes I prefer the video aspect of it because it kind of shows you, because then that's what's so great about camera trapping, is that it shows you animals in their natural environment behaving as if you weren't there. So yeah, I would say that videos just a bit better.
Yeah, I think you can, I mean, obviously image speaks 1,000 words, but I do think when tracking animals and trying to find out their behavior, I think you can glean more from a video than you can, say, a series of single shot photos as well.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more technical as well to kind of get the perfect still using a camera trap. I've been trying with my bucket camera for absolutely forever, and honestly it's been a nightmare trying to get the positioning right, get the lighting right, get, you know, the animals come in the right place, because, you know, sometimes they come just kind of like scooch around, have a little right on the edge of the frame and then leave. And I was like, oh no. So that's why I think it's just better to use videos, and then you can take stills from that if you really wanted to.
Thank you. Okay, this is from Rachel. How do I stop my camera trap steaming up on a warm night? Oh, you're all nodding, so who wants to answer that? Go on. Who wants to?
Tell me, that would be great.
Okay, Kate, go on then.
Right, okay. It is an issue, especially if it gets cold at night and then it's quite dewy, and then you get like condensation effectively on the lens. You can buy some products. There are some products that are designed for like motorbike helmets and stuff, like Rain-X and things like that you can put on, that sort of helps stop that condensation. I've also tried a very dilute bit of washing up liquid on the lens, like if you're in the bathroom, you know, and the mud, it's all steamed up, and you put a bit of soap on your hands so you can see your mirror. It's the same as that. And also positioning, trying to think where you're positioning it. Is it really grassy and dewy underneath, and the temperature difference? Sometimes just by putting it on like a slab, like I put it on a piece of wood rather than on the ground, and that was enough to eliminate some of that moisture. But it is one of those, and you can guarantee the best clip you've ever had is the one with all the condensation on, and you're like, no. But it's just one of those things. There are things you can do to help cut it down, but I'm sure the others, especially Stuart, has had exactly the same.
I can see Rob and Stuart nodding their way through that. Stuart, have you got anything to add? And then we'll ask Rob if you've got anything to add.
I wouldn't say I've suffered because of warm nights. So once you get into the Shropshire Hills, you're much more likely to get very misty nights, and it tends to be the mist that causes the issue and the fogging. But I haven't really found a solution. I've tried some of the things that Kate's mentioned there, and again, it's part of the joys of camera trapping. I think if you were put off because you got a few misty clips, you'd end up not getting any world-class clips in the future. So I think it's that perseverance, and certainly for me, all of us will have experienced having the disappointment of misty lenses when we've got those clips that we've been waiting for. But you just keep trying, and eventually you'll get it right, and the weather conditions and everything else will be right.
Anything to add to that, Rob? I can see you nodding.
Yeah, it's so if you ask, obviously this year, the last year has been very different for everybody, and we hope that you're all well. But if you ask any glasses wearer that is also wearing a mask, they've usually got a particular cloth that they wipe to stop anti-fogging from wearing a facial covering. These are pretty good, and we found these are pretty good on the cases of camera traps. But yeah, again, it is about the height in which you're placing them. So sometimes it can be that you're just putting it too close to the dew line, and you're kind of, how can I say it? You're almost using the wrong technology because you're just expecting too much of it sometimes. So there's always a trade-off. I think that's something you've got to be clear on.
Well, there you go, everyone. So this is a question. It's coming from Paul. Hello. He said, question for Rob. Okay, we have a number of old trail cameras that no longer work. Do you have any ideas for reusing the components in them? I know Stuart has this issue too.
So, again, this is huge. It's a bit like, hi, can I repair my my vintage car with an old Land Rover? Potentially. I think the first thing is that are the components comparable? Are they not? Sometimes you can reuse components. I mean, it's the same reason that people sell power tools and things like that on eBay, so they can take them apart, restitch them together. The only problem is that sometimes you might find that you're just chasing bugs out of them continually, electronics and technical bugs, because things just might not work that well together. So I would say, YouTube is your friend. Give it a go. I am sure there are many people that have tried it. I know that with our kits, you can take them apart and reuse them for many different things. So most of our community has actually answered up all of our questions for us. And I'm sure there are some amazing brands and organizations out there. So I would just reach out to they'll probably have forums or YouTube channels, their social media, and ask. Because I do believe that we should repair things until they can no longer exist or function in the world.
100%, definitely. Well, thank you very much for that question. Okay, so next, let's have one from Stuart, shall we? This is from Sharon. I've wanted a wildlife camera for years. It's just knowing which one to buy. Some are very expensive. Any guidance, please? Kiss, kiss. From Sharon.
Right. Thanks, Sharon. I'm sure they weren't aimed at me. All right. This is kind of like the $1 million question is which camera trap's best, and I think we've probably all run the various models through the mill, tested it. I mean, I've tested several. I'll name a few brands. It's best that everybody that learns from everybody else's mistakes. So some of the very cheap models that I've had over the years, that there are some very cheap models that I won't mention that you can get through various online shops, and they only cost about £25, £30 or so, and they do a great job if you just put them in the garden and you're just going back to check them every day. But I found that for doing the kind of field research and trying to monitor animals further afield, you need those more durable, slightly more expensive cameras. So Bushnell do a huge range of cameras, and Brownings are becoming more and more popular. But within those manufacturers, there's also quite a few models, but they're becoming much better at making different ranges of models. So there tends to always be like a starter pack, which for the cameras that I've been using, they often do start around about £100 or so. Which again, that's because that benefits my needs, because I'm trying to get as many cameras out as possible that I can depend on to pick up the mammal data that we're after. If you really want to go expensive, there's also the Reconyx brand, they're an American-based brand that they produce really top quality camera traps that are version on the professional, but I won't say exactly how much they are, but what I can tell you is that when you put them out, you are having nightmares and lying awake wondering if that camera trap's still safe out in the woodland, but you've left it for the last few days. So yeah, it's well worth doing your research. There's various places, as Rob's alluded to, there's loads of YouTube channels that do really comprehensive reviews of the cameras as they come out now.
I mean, it depends what you want it for as well, isn't it? It's like, you just want to find out what's there, then the quality doesn't matter. And or you want to make a movie, then you've got to get the one that you're going to have sleepless nights over. But there is a whole range, isn't there? Really. Yeah,
there's so many. And what I found is that I started off with a mid-range, quite a cheap camera. I was really pleased that I just picked up my first Otter, but then I thought I'd love an Otter that's in HD. So maybe I can just have a look to see what the next camera up is. The next thing I know, I want something that's so good that I can project it onto a massive cinema screen and while I'm doing a talk. And you do kind of, I think once you get into camera trapping, you do start to get addicted. And I'm not sure if there's any kind of therapy out there for it, but I do probably spend a little bit too much of my personal savings on camera trapping, but it's well worth it.
So listen, let's try and get, we haven't got long left. Let's try and get a couple of more questions in. This one is coming from Bruce. Can you put camera traps out anywhere, or do you need permission, for example, in your local park? Now, who wants to answer that? Give us a nod. No one's nodding. Go on, Stuart.
This is one of my concerns at the moment, because there is obviously a growing interest in camera traps, so that they're becoming more affordable and easier to purchase. So more and more people are using them. So I tend to work on the assumption that if nobody knows the camera trap's there, then the camera trap's probably safe and it's not causing any harm. But it's advisable that if you're going to put it out on other people's land, it makes sense to make sure that you've got the landowner's permission to put those out. On some public land, you have to be very careful that your camera's not going to be picking up rights of way where there's people walking past, because then the camera trap does become more of like a CCTV camera. It's going to pick up people, and at that point you would have to put signage up to cover yourself legally, and nobody really wants to put a big sign to advertise they've got a camera trap out. It detracts from the kind of like the natural aspect of camera trapping. So yeah, but I'd always say make sure you get permission, but also be as discreet as possible, but try not to pick up local dog walkers or anything like that walking past the camera trap.
Well, listen, thank you all so much, all of you. And quickly, before I wrap up, all of you, I just want your top tip for capturing wildlife in your garden. Okay, Kate, let's go.
Enjoy it. Experiment.
Rob?
It's not about the perfect photograph. It's about how you're getting to know your natural surrounding.
Kalyani?
Yeah, and on that note, just keep practicing and keep going, keep changing it around. If it doesn't work, just keep trying it. And like Kate said, have fun. As Rob said, get to know the wild. It's more about the process than the result.
Stuart?
I think one of my top tips is, if you're getting really good quality or any kind of quality wildlife in your garden, shout about it, tell your friends about it, make sure that people know that they've got wildlife on their doorstep so you can protect it better.
Well, listen, thank you all so much for inspiring us for the last hour. I mean, I don't know about everybody watching, but I want to go and get the camera trap out tonight, see what I can find. So thank you so, so much. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, that is all we have time for. Thank you, everybody, for signing up and tuning in. I hope you got a lot out of that last hour. And remember, you can still sign up for the Wildlife Trust 30 Days Wild on their website. But that's all from me. Have a lovely evening. Thank you ever so much. And thank you for having me. And I will see you soon.